I walked into my uncle's dental office with a smile on my face and a ring on my finger. 3 weeks later, I stared at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, knowing I'd never been touched by anyone. Not even Mark, the man I was supposed to marry in less than a month. How do you explain the impossible? I couldn't. And when I tried, the world turned its back on me, called me a liar, a cheater, worse. The man I loved looked at me like I was poison. My own mother wouldn't meet my eyes. I stood at the edge of a bridge one cold morning, ready to end it all, when a stranger grabbed my arm and whispered, "I know what he did to you." That stranger knew my uncle's secret, and he was about to help me expose a monster hiding behind a white coat and a trusted smile. If you're new here, welcome. This channel shares real stories that need to be heard. Stories about truth, survival, and the kind of justice that doesn't always come easy. We post new videos every single day, so please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what comes next. My name is Emily, and 3 months ago, I thought I had my whole life figured out. I was 23, engaged to my high school sweetheart Mark, planning a small wedding in my parents' backyard. We'd decided together, both of us, to wait until marriage. It was old-fashioned, maybe, but it mattered to us. It mattered to me. Mark worked construction, coming home every evening with dust in his hair and calluses on his hands. I worked part-time at a bookstore downtown, the kind with creaky wooden floors and the smell of old paper hanging in the air, and helped my mom with her catering business on weekends. We weren't rich, but we were happy. We had a plan, a future that felt solid, real, like something we could hold on to. We'd picked out an apartment together, a small 2-bedroom on the east side of town. Mark had already started painting the living room, a soft gray color I'd chosen from a dozen samples. We spent our evenings there, sitting on the floor, because we didn't have furniture yet, eating takeout and talking about baby names, even though we'd agreed to wait a few years before starting a family. Everything felt simple, clean, like the beginning of one of those romantic movies where nothing really bad happens because the couple is just too good together. The kind of love story that makes you believe the world is fundamentally fair. Then my tooth started hurting. It was a dull ache at first, easy to ignore, just a sensitivity to cold drinks, a slight throb when I bit down on the left side. But a week before the wedding, it got worse. Sharp, stabbing pain that made my jaw throb and my eyes water. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, pressing my hand to my cheek, trying to breathe through it. My mom insisted I see someone right away. "You can't walk down the aisle wincing every time you smile, Emily. What will people think?" She suggested my uncle, Dr. Julian Cross. He was my dad's younger brother, a dentist with his own practice across town in one of those modern medical buildings with mirrored windows and a parking lot that always looked half empty. I'd only seen him a handful of times growing up. Holidays, birthday parties, the occasional family barbecue where he'd show up late and leave early. He was polite, professional, a little distant, the kind of uncle who asked how school was going but never really listened to the answer. The kind who gave you a $20 bill for your birthday and forgot your name by Christmas. Still, family was family, and he offered to fit me in last minute. No charge. "Consider it my wedding gift," he'd said over the phone, his voice smooth and practiced. I remember walking into his office on a Tuesday afternoon, the sun bright and hot on my shoulders. The waiting room smelled like mint and antiseptic, that clinical smell that makes your stomach tighten even when nothing's wrong. Soft instrumental music played through hidden speakers, something classical, violins and piano, the kind of music designed to calm you without you noticing. Everything was beige and cream, calming colors meant to put patients at ease. There were magazines on a glass coffee table, all of them at least 6 months old, and a water cooler in the corner that gurgled quietly. The receptionist, a woman in her 40s with perfect nails painted burgundy, and a tight smile that never reached her eyes, checked me in. "Dr. Cross is just finishing up with another patient. He'll be right with you, hun." I sat down in one of the cushioned chairs, flipping through a magazine I wasn't really reading. The pages were glossy, filled with recipes I'd never make, and decorating tips for houses I'd never afford. My phone buzzed. Mark, asking if I wanted Thai or pizza for dinner. I smiled and texted back. "Surprise me." His response came immediately. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Can't wait to marry you." I felt warm all over, safe in a way I'd never questioned. 20 minutes later, I was in the chair. Uncle Julian came in wearing his white coat, blue gloves already on, his dark hair graying at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished rather than old. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. They were pale blue, cold, like ice over deep water. "Emily, big day coming up, huh?" "Yeah, I'm excited." My voice sounded small in the bright, sterile room. The walls were covered in diplomas and certificates, all of them in expensive-looking frames. There was a poster about proper brushing technique, a model of a mouth with perfect white teeth. "Let's take a look." He adjusted the overhead light, the beam harsh and clinical, making me squint. I opened my mouth, and he leaned in close, his breath smelling faintly of coffee and something else I couldn't identify. Peppermint, maybe. His gloved fingers were cool against my gum. "Looks like a cavity. Pretty deep. I'm going to need to do a filling. Shouldn't take long." "Will it hurt?" "Not if we do it right. I'll give you some sedation, just enough to keep you comfortable. You'll be a little drowsy, but you'll be fine. Better than being awake for the drilling, trust me." I hesitated. "I've never been sedated before." "It's standard procedure, Emily, especially for deep cavities like this. I do it all the time." He patted my shoulder, the gesture meant to be reassuring but somehow feeling rehearsed, mechanical. "Trust me, you're in good hands." Family takes care of family, right? I did trust him. He was family. My father's brother, a respected professional. Why wouldn't I trust him? He prepared a needle, tapping it lightly to remove air bubbles, holding it up to the light. The liquid inside was clear, innocent-looking. "Just a little pinch," he said, and I felt the cold sting in the crook of my arm, sharp and then spreading. Within seconds, the room started to blur at the edges, sounds growing distant and muffled, like I was underwater or wrapped in cotton. The overhead light became a soft glow rather than a harsh glare. My limbs felt heavy, disconnected from my body. The last thing I remember clearly was the hum of the overhead light and Uncle Julian's voice, calm and detached, almost soothing. "Just relax, Emily. This will all be over soon." Then nothing. I woke up in the recovery chair an hour later. My mouth felt numb, packed with cotton that tasted like chemicals and blood. My head was heavy, like someone had filled it with wet sand. My limbs were sluggish, uncooperative. I tried to sit up and the room tilted sideways. The receptionist stood nearby, clipboard in hand, her burgundy nails tapping against the metal surface. "How are you feeling, hun?" "Tired," I mumbled, my tongue thick and clumsy. "Really tired." "That's normal. The sedation will wear off in a few hours." "Do you have someone picking you up?" I nodded slowly, because moving my head too fast made everything spin. Mark was outside, waiting in his truck. Uncle Julian appeared briefly, peeling off his gloves with a snap, dropping them in a waste bin. He didn't quite meet my eyes. "You did great, Emily. Take it easy today. No solid foods for a while. Soft things only. Soup, yogurt, that kind of thing. If you have any issues, give me a call." "Thanks," I said, my words coming out slurred and wrong. He smiled, that same smile that didn't reach his eyes, and left. Mark drove me home, his hand warm on my knee, his thumb rubbing small circles there. "How'd it go?" "Fine. I'm just really tired." "Yeah, you look pretty out of it. Let's get you home." I slept for most of the evening, deep and dreamless, the kind of sleep that feels like falling into a black hole. When I woke up, it was dark outside, the streetlights casting orange shadows through the blinds. Mark was sitting beside me on the couch, watching a game on TV with the volume low. He kissed my forehead, his lips warm and familiar. "Feeling better?" "Yeah, but I didn't. Not really. There was a strange heaviness in my chest, a sense of wrongness I couldn't name, like something had been taken from me that I couldn't identify. My body felt strange, foreign, like it didn't quite belong to me anymore. I chalked it up to the sedation, the stress of the wedding, the lingering soreness in my jaw where he'd worked. 2 weeks passed. The wedding was perfect, small, intimate, everything we'd hoped for. My mom cried, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. My dad gave a toast that made everyone laugh, something about how Mark was getting the better end of the deal because I could cook and he could barely boil water. Mark and I danced in the backyard under string lights, the grass soft under our feet, the summer air warm and sweet with the smell of roses from my mom's garden. For a few hours, everything felt right again. I wore my grandmother's pearls, and a dress my mom had helped me pick out, and Mark looked at me like I was the only person in the world. Our wedding night was gentle, nervous, everything I'd imagined it would be. Afterward, lying in Mark's arms in our new apartment, I felt complete, safe, like everything had finally fallen into place. But the feeling didn't last. A week after the wedding, I started feeling nauseous in the mornings. Just a mild queasiness at first, easily ignored. I thought it was nerves, stress, maybe something I ate. But it got worse. I'd wake up with my stomach churning, barely making it to the bathroom before throwing up. The smell of coffee, which I'd always loved, made me gag. I couldn't stand the sight of eggs. When I missed my period, something that had never happened before, not once in 10 years, I felt a cold knot of fear settle in my stomach. I bought a pregnancy test on my lunch break, hands shaking as I paid at the self-checkout, hoping no one I knew would see me. I took it in the bathroom at work, locking the door and sitting on the closed toilet lid, staring at the little plastic stick as 2 pink lines appeared. Positive. I sat there for 20 minutes, my mind racing. It wasn't possible. Mark and I hadn't. We'd kept our promise. We'd waited. The wedding night was our first time, just a week ago. But that had only been a week ago. You can't get pregnant and test positive in a week. I knew that. Everyone knew that. It takes at least 2 weeks for hormones to show up, usually longer. So how? I called my doctor, my voice shaking so badly she asked if I was okay. She scheduled an ultrasound for the next day. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't know how. What would I even say? That I was pregnant, but it wasn't his baby, and I had no idea how it happened. The ultrasound confirmed it. I was 8 weeks pregnant. 8 weeks. The technician, a kind woman with graying hair and gentle hands, moved the wand across my belly, her eyes on the screen. "There's the heartbeat," she said, pointing to a flickering spot. Strong and healthy. I stared at the screen, at the tiny shape that didn't look like anything yet, and felt the world tilt. 8 weeks meant conception had happened 2 months ago, 6 weeks before the wedding. The only medical procedure I'd had in that time was... No, that couldn't be right. The room felt too small, too bright. My chest tightened. "Is everything okay?" the technician asked, concerned. "I need to go," I said, my voice hollow. "If you've made it this far, please subscribe to our channel and leave a like. It really matters to us. It shows YouTube that this content is important to you. And honestly, your support is what keeps these stories alive. We're a small channel trying to make a difference, and every single subscription helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories." I told Mark that night. I had to. Keeping it from him felt like swallowing glass, like choking on something sharp and impossible. We were sitting on the couch, the TV off, the silence between us thick and suffocating. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, each second louder than the last. I handed him the ultrasound photo, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. He stared at it for a long time, his face going pale, then red, then pale again. Then he looked at me, his eyes searching mine for something, an explanation, an excuse. I don't know. 8 weeks? I nodded, unable to speak. "Emily, we got married a week ago." "I know. So this baby?" His voice cracked, the words coming out strangled. "It's not mine. Mark, I don't understand. I haven't been with anyone."
"I swear to God. I swear on everything. Don't lie to me." He stood up, the photo falling to the floor, the image of our maybe baby face down on the carpet. "You expect me to believe you just magically got pregnant? That this is some kind of miracle? Some kind of immaculate conception? I'm not lying." Tears streamed down my face, hot and desperate. "I don't know how this happened. I don't understand any of this. Who was it?" His voice was cold now, distant, like he was talking to a stranger instead of the woman he'd just married. "Who did you sleep with? Was it someone from work? One of my friends? How long has this been going on?" "No one. Mark, please, you have to believe me. I trusted you." His voice broke. "I loved you. I thought, God, I'm such an idiot. Mark, I can't do this." He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, his keys from the table. "I need to get out of here. I need to think." "Mark, wait, please." The door slammed. The sound echoed through the apartment, final and absolute. He didn't come back that night, or the next. I called him 17 times the first day. He didn't answer. I texted until my fingers cramped. Nothing. 3 days later, he sent me a single text. "I'm staying at my brother's. I need time to think." But time didn't help. The more I tried to explain, the angrier he got. Every conversation ended the same way, with him asking who I'd slept with,
Me swearing it was no one, and him calling me a liar. He told his family. His mother called me, her voice dripping with disgust. I thought you were a good girl, Emily. I thought you had values. How could you do this to my son? They told my family. My mother showed up at the apartment, her face twisted with disappointment and shame. Tell me the truth, she said, her voice shaking. Tell me who the father is. We can figure this out, but you have to stop lying. I'm not lying, Mom. Then how do you explain this? She gestured at my stomach, still flat, but somehow feeling huge, obvious, like a scarlet letter written across my body. How do you explain being pregnant when you haven't been with your husband? I don't know. That's not good enough, Emily. That's not an answer. My father wouldn't even talk to me. He looked at me once, his eyes filled with something that looked like betrayal, and walked away. Within a week, everyone knew, and no one believed me. Friends stopped answering my calls. I'd see them at the grocery store and they'd pretend not to notice me, turning down different aisles, suddenly very interested in the labels on soup cans. My coworker at the bookstore, Sarah, who I'd considered a close friend, asked for a different shift so she wouldn't have to work with me. People whispered when I walked by. I heard the words even when they tried to hide them. Cheater, liar, whore. Someone spray-painted slut on my car in the bookstore parking lot. My boss, an older man who'd always been kind to me, asked if maybe I needed some time off to deal with personal issues. I stopped going out except when absolutely necessary. Stopped answering my phone. The apartment Mark and I had been so excited about became a prison. I'd lie on the couch for hours, staring at the gray walls he'd painted, feeling the baby grow inside me. Proof of something I couldn't explain, couldn't defend against. Mark filed for an annulment 3 weeks after the wedding. His lawyer sent the papers by courier, delivered to my door like a pizza I hadn't ordered. I signed them sitting on the floor, tears dripping onto the pages, smudging the ink. I didn't fight it. What was the point? No one would believe the truth, and I didn't even know what the truth was. My mom let me move back into my childhood bedroom, but the atmosphere in the house was toxic. My parents barely spoke to me. Dinners were silent, painful affairs where I pushed food around my plate while my father read the newspaper and my mother stared at her hands. My younger sister, Ashley, 16 and furious, told me I'd embarrassed the whole family. Everyone at school knows, she hissed. They all think I'm related to a slut. I spent my days staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster, listening to the sounds of the house, the creak of floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the muffled voices of my parents arguing in their bedroom about what to do with me. My nights were worse, filled with dreams I couldn't quite remember, but that left me gasping and sweating and reaching for something just out of grasp. The baby inside me grew, a constant reminder of something I couldn't explain, couldn't undo. I felt it move for the first time on a Thursday evening, a flutter like butterfly wings. I cried for an hour. I Googled everything I could think of. Could you get pregnant from a toilet seat? From a swimming pool? Could sperm somehow survive on surfaces? The answers were always the same. No, no, no. Pregnancy required intercourse. There was no other way, but I hadn't had intercourse. Not until my wedding night. So how? One morning, 6 weeks after Mark left, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My eyes were hollow, ringed with dark circles that looked like bruises. My skin was pale, almost gray. My hair hung limp and unwashed. I looked like a ghost, like something already dead but still moving. I thought about ending it. Not the pregnancy. I couldn't do that, no matter how much I wanted to disappear. Despite everything, despite the impossible circumstances, I couldn't bring myself to terminate. It wasn't the baby's fault, but me, my life, the unbearable weight of existing in a world that hated me, that had already decided I was guilty of something I couldn't remember doing. I drove to the bridge on the edge of town, the same bridge Mark and I used to walk across on summer evenings, holding hands and talking about the future. It was early morning, the sky gray and overcast, threatening rain. The river below was dark, swollen with recent storms. I parked my car on the shoulder and walked to the railing, my sneakers scuffing against the concrete. The metal was cold under my hands. I looked down at the dark water below, watching it churn and foam around the bridge supports. The wind was cold, sharp against my skin, cutting through my thin jacket. I closed my eyes, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles turned white. Just one step. That's all it would take. One step, and it would all be over. No more shame. No more whispers. No more waking up to a world that had decided I was a liar and a cheat. The baby moved inside me, a tiny kick against my ribs. I started to cry. Don't. The voice came from behind me, quiet but firm, cutting through the wind. I turned, my heart hammering. A man stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his face shadowed by the brim of a baseball cap. He was maybe 30, wearing a janitor's uniform, dark blue pants and a matching shirt with a name tag. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. Who are you? My voice came out hoarse, broken. My name's Jake. I work at your uncle's office. Cleaning crew. I've seen you there. My stomach dropped. The memory of that afternoon, hazy and incomplete, flashed through my mind. I know what he did to you, Jake said, stepping closer, his face serious, almost angry. And I know you don't remember. Jake took me to a diner a few blocks from the bridge, a small place with cracked vinyl booths and a flickering neon sign that said, "Open 24 hours." We sat in a corner booth, away from the few other customers, a truck driver at the counter, a tired waitress refilling coffee. The smell of coffee and grease hung thick in the air, mixing with the faint scent of bleach. He ordered 2 cups of black coffee, though neither of us touched them. They sat between us, steam rising, going cold. I've worked at Dr. Cross's office for 2 years, Jake said, his voice low, careful. He kept glancing at the door like he expected someone to walk in. I come in after hours, around 10 p.m., clean the exam rooms, take out the trash, mop the floors. I'm invisible. People don't notice the guy mopping the floors. They don't see the janitor. I might as well be furniture. I stared at him, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. What are you talking about? Jake's jaw tightened. He looked down at his hands, calloused and scarred from years of manual labor. Your uncle. He hesitated, like the words were physically difficult to say. He doesn't just fill cavities, Emily. He drugs women, young women, patients who come in alone, without family, without someone waiting for them. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't. They were just sounds, syllables without meaning. He sedates them, Jake continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Keeps them under longer than necessary, uses higher doses than needed. And then, he looked away, his hands clenched into fists on the table, knuckles white. He does things, records it sometimes, sells the footage to people on the dark web. Sometimes he sells access to the women themselves. There's a whole network, other doctors, other people. They pay him. He lets them in through the back door after hours. I felt bile rise in my throat. The diner spun around me. No, he's my uncle. He's my father's brother. He wouldn't. I've seen the files, Emily. Jake's voice was bitter, angry. I've found the recordings. He keeps them on an external hard drive in his office, hidden behind a false panel in his desk. I've watched him do it. I've seen him lead unconscious women out through the back entrance. Seen the men waiting in the parking lot. Then why didn't you go to the police? My voice came out shrill, panicked. I tried. Jake's laugh was harsh, empty. 2 years ago. Went straight to the police station. Told them everything I'd seen. They didn't believe me. Said I was a disgruntled employee making up lies because I'd been passed over for a promotion or something. Dr. Cross is well connected in this town. Big donor to the police charity fund. Friends with the mayor. Plays golf with half the city council. His lawyer threatened to sue me for slander, defamation. I'm just some guy who cleans toilets for minimum wage. Who are they going to believe? I pressed my hands to my face, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of what he was saying. Why are you telling me this? Because you're proof, Jake said, leaning forward, his voice urgent. You're pregnant, and you don't know how. You don't remember. That baby, he gestured at my stomach. That baby is evidence. Evidence of what? That he assaulted you. That he's been doing this for years. That I'm not crazy. That I'm not making it up. The word hung in the air between us, heavy and horrible. Assaulted. Such a clinical word for something so devastating. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face, my whole body trembling. I don't remember. I don't remember anything. Just waking up tired. Nothing else. That's the point, Emily. The sedation. He uses something strong enough to make sure you don't remember. Something that erases the memory even as it's happening. I found empty vials in the trash once. Propofol mixed with something else. something I'd never heard of. But how do I prove it? How do I prove something I can't even remember? Jake leaned forward, his eyes intense. DNA test. If that baby is his, we've got him. If that baby is your uncle's child, that's proof of assault. They can't ignore that. They can't explain that away. The thought made me sick. The idea that my uncle, my father's brother, could be the father of the child growing inside me. That every time the baby moved, every time I felt that flutter, it was him, a part of him, living inside me. I need to think, I said, my voice barely audible. Emily, I need to think. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to go through with it. 3 days of crying, of staring at my phone, of imagining the look on my uncle's face when he realized what I was about to do. 3 days of my parents asking what was wrong, why I was even more withdrawn than usual, and me lying and saying I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was dying inside, slowly, cell by cell. Jake helped me set it up. He picked me up early one morning when my parents were still asleep and drove me across town to a private lab, the kind that didn't ask questions if you paid in cash. We went to a place that did paternity testing, DNA analysis, the kind of place people went when they needed answers they couldn't get anywhere else. They took a sample from me, a swab from my mouth, quick and painless. The technician, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, explained the process. We'll compare your DNA with the potential father's. If you can provide a sample from him, we can give you definitive results. How long? I asked. About a week, sometimes less. Jake paid cash, $300 that I promised to pay him back, though he waved me off. As we left the lab, I asked the question that had been haunting me. What if it's not him? What if I'm wrong? Then we keep looking, Jake said firmly. But I know it's him, Emily. I've seen the way he looks at young women when they're in that chair. I've seen the files, the names. I've watched him check his appointment book, picking out the ones who come alone. You're not the first. You're just the first one who's pregnant. That thought should have made me feel less alone. Instead, it made everything worse. How many others? How many women had sat in that chair, trusted him, and woken up violated without even knowing it? The week crawled by, each day longer than the last. I barely ate, barely slept. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby move and trying not to think about whose child it might be. Mark sent me a single text during that time. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. I didn't respond. What could I say? That I thought my uncle might have drugged and raped me? That I was trying to prove it? He wouldn't believe me. No one would. When the results came in, I opened them alone in my bedroom, sitting on the edge of my childhood bed, surrounded by posters of bands I used to love, and photos of friends who no longer spoke to me. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. The test was negative. The baby wasn't Mark's. I'd known that already, but seeing it in writing felt like a punch to the gut, like the universe confirming what everyone already believed, that I'd cheated, that I'd lied, that I was exactly what they thought I was. But that wasn't the answer I needed. Jake was waiting outside in his car, a beat-up Honda with rust spots and a cracked windshield. I climbed in, showed him the paper with trembling hands. He read it quickly, then looked at me. We need another test. We need to test your uncle. How? He's not going to voluntarily give us his DNA. He's not going to agree to this. Jake was quiet for a moment, staring out the windshield at my parents' house, the windows dark except for the glow of the TV in the living room. Then he said, I can get it. There's a coffee cup he uses every day in his office. Same mug, keeps it on his desk, leaves it in the trash at the end of the day. I'll get it tonight. Jake, this ends now, Emily. One way or another. I'm not going to let him keep doing this. And you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to prove to everyone that you're not lying. 2 days later, we had the second test back. Positive. Dr. Julian Cross was the father of my baby. My uncle. The man I'd trusted. The man my family had trusted for years. The man who'd given me 20s for my birthday and forgotten my name by Christmas. He'd drugged me, assaulted me, violated me in the most fundamental way possible. And I'd carried the proof inside me for months while the world called me a liar, while my husband left me, while my family turned their backs. I sat on the floor of my bedroom, the paper in my hands, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe, until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen shut. The baby kicked, oblivious, innocent, a life caught in the middle of something horrible. Jake called the police. This time, with the DNA evidence in hand, they listened. The investigation moved fast once they had the DNA evidence. Too many years had passed with Jake's warnings ignored, and now the police were trying to make up for lost time, trying to cover their own mistakes. They got a warrant and searched Uncle Julian's office on a Tuesday morning. I heard about it from Jake, who called me as it was happening. "They're going through everything," he said, his voice excited, vindicated. "They found the hard drive. They found the files. Emily, there are dozens of women. Dozens." The news hit me like a physical blow. Dozens. Not just me. Dozens of women who'd sat in that chair, trusted a medical professional, and woken up violated without even knowing it. The police found records dating back 5 years. They found videos, encrypted files, payment records. They found names, addresses, appointment times. They found evidence of a network, other men involved, clients who'd paid for access, a whole underground system of abuse and exploitation. Uncle Julian was arrested that afternoon, led out of his office in handcuffs while news cameras filmed. I watched it on TV from my parents' couch, my mother beside me in stunned silence. He looked smaller somehow, diminished, no longer the confident professional, but just a man who'd been caught. My father came home from work and saw the news. He stood in the doorway, staring at the screen, his face draining of color. "That's my brother," he said quietly. "That's Julian." My mother started to cry. I just sat there, numb, watching them replay the footage over and over. Once the story broke, other women started coming forward. Women who'd had the same experience. A dental appointment, sedation, waking up feeling wrong but not knowing why. Some of them had never connected the dots. Some had suspected but had no proof, no way to convince anyone. Some had tried to report it and been dismissed, just like Jake. The prosecution built a case quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos, financial records, testimony from the janitor who'd witnessed it, DNA evidence from my pregnancy. They had him cold. The trial started 3 months after his arrest. I was 6 months pregnant by then, my belly round and obvious under the conservative dresses my mother insisted I wear to court. "You want them to see you as a victim," she said, her voice gentle for the first time in months. Not as... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I testified on a cold Tuesday morning, my voice shaking as I told the court what I knew, what I'd learned. Other women testified too, their stories echoing mine. A pattern emerged. Young women, alone, sedated beyond what was necessary for their procedures. Some of them had noticed money missing from their purses afterward. Some had found bruises they couldn't explain. Some had just felt wrong, violated, but had convinced themselves they were being paranoid. Uncle Julian sat at the defense table the whole time, stone-faced, his lawyer beside him whispering strategies. His lawyer argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that I was lying for attention, that this was all some elaborate scheme to explain away an affair. He called me a vindictive niece trying to destroy a good man's reputation. He suggested I'd gotten pregnant by someone else, maybe even Jake, and was using my uncle as a scapegoat, but the jury didn't buy it. The DNA evidence was irrefutable. The videos were real. The testimony of multiple women, all with the same story, was too consistent to be fabricated. He was convicted on 12 counts of sexual assault, 3 counts of distribution of illegal recordings, and 2 counts of human trafficking. The judge sentenced him to 30 years without. The possibility of parole. When the sentence was read, I heard my mother release a shaky breath beside me. My father buried his face in his hands. I looked at Uncle Julian. No longer uncle, just Julian Cross, the man who had destroyed so many lives, and his face remained impassive. No regret, no remorse, just a cold emptiness where a soul should have been. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me once. His pale blue eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw nothing there. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just the same cold assessment I'd seen that day in the dental chair, when I was too sedated to understand what it meant. Then he was gone. The aftermath wasn't easy. It never is when something like this happens. You don't just win a trial and suddenly have your life back. The damage runs deeper than that, spreads further than you can see. Mark never came back. Even after the truth came out, Even after the DNA evidence proved I'd been telling the truth all along, he couldn't get past it. "I believe you now," he said, during one painful phone call 3 weeks after the sentencing. "I know you didn't cheat. I know you didn't lie. But Emily, I can't look at you without seeing that day I thought you'd betrayed me. I can't separate what I felt then from what I know now. I'm sorry. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at him that he should have believed me, that he should have trusted me, that his doubt had been one of the worst parts of the whole nightmare. But I couldn't, because I understood. Trauma doesn't follow logical rules. It doesn't care about evidence or truth. It just exists, poisoning everything it touches. We finalized the annulment. He moved to another state. I heard through mutual friends that he got married 2 years later to someone he met at work. I was happy for him. I really was. He deserved to move on, to have the life we'd planned together, but with someone who didn't carry the weight of this story. My relationship with my parents healed slowly, painfully, like a broken bone that hadn't been set quite right. My mother apologized more times than I could count, crying every time, her guilt consuming her. "I should have believed you," she'd say, over and over. "I'm your mother. I should have believed you." My father struggled more. He'd lost his brother, not to death, but to something worse. The knowledge of what Julian had done, what he'd been capable of, ate at him. How did I not know? He'd ask me sometimes, late at night when he couldn't sleep. How did I not see it? We grew up together. I thought I knew him. I had no answer for that. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like family. Sometimes they wear white coats and have medical degrees and show up to Christmas dinner with a bottle of wine. I gave birth to a baby girl on a rainy morning in April. Labor was long, painful, exhausting, and when they finally placed her on my chest, I looked down at her and felt nothing, just a vast emptiness where maternal love was supposed to bloom. The nurses assured me it was normal, that bonding takes time, that I was tired and hormonal and recovering from trauma. But I knew it was more than that. Every time I looked at her, I saw him. Her eyes were the same pale blue, that cold, empty color. Her hair was dark like his. The shape of her face reminded me of the family photos hanging in my parents' hallway. I tried. God, I tried so hard. I fed her, changed her, held her when she cried. I did all the things mothers are supposed to do, but I couldn't feel what I was supposed to feel. The connection other mothers described, that instant, overwhelming love, never came. When she was 6 weeks old, I made the hardest decision of my life. I called an adoption agency. The social worker was kind, understanding. She'd handled cases like mine before. Children born from assault. Mothers who couldn't separate the child from the trauma. "There's no shame in this," she told me. "You're doing what's best for both of you. That takes courage." It didn't feel like courage. It felt like failure. It felt like letting him win. But I knew I couldn't raise her. I knew I couldn't look at her every day and not see him. I knew I couldn't give her the love she deserved, the unconditional maternal devotion every child needs. She deserved better than a mother who flinched every time those pale blue eyes looked at her. I chose the adoptive parents carefully. A couple in their late 30s who'd been trying for years to have a child, who'd gone through multiple failed IVF attempts, and were desperate to be parents. They were good people, stable people who could give her everything I couldn't. The day I signed the papers, I held her one last time. She was sleeping, her tiny face peaceful, oblivious to what was happening. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I'm so sorry I can't be what you need. But they'll love you. They'll love you the way you deserve to be loved." I kissed her forehead and handed her to the social worker. Then I walked away. The recovery took years. Therapy helped, though the first 3 therapists I tried didn't understand the complexity of what I was dealing with. The 4th one, Dr. Sarah Chen, specialized in trauma from medical abuse. She got it. She understood the violation of having your own body used against you, the betrayal of trust, the impossibility of explaining something you couldn't even remember. "Your brain is trying to protect you," she explained during one session. "The gaps in your memory aren't a weakness. They're a survival mechanism. Your mind is doing what it needs to do to keep you functional." But I wanted to remember. I needed to remember. The not knowing was almost worse than knowing would be. My imagination filled in the blanks with images I couldn't escape, scenarios that played out in my nightmares and waking thoughts. Dr. Chen taught me that I might never remember, and that was okay. Your worth isn't tied to your ability to recall what happened, she said. You know the truth. The evidence proved the truth. You don't need the memory to validate your experience. Slowly, painfully, I started to believe her. Jake and I stayed in touch. He'd lost his job after the trial. The medical building management had cleaned house, firing everyone associated with Dr. Cross's practice. But he didn't regret it. I'd do it again, he told me over coffee one afternoon, a year after the sentencing. Every single time. Those women deserve justice. You deserve justice. You saved my life, I said. On that bridge. If you hadn't been there. But I was there. He smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from him. And you're still here. That's what matters. We never became more than friends. Some people thought we would, thought we should. The survivor and her rescuer. A perfect redemption arc. But life isn't a movie. Sometimes people are just meant to be witnesses to each other's survival, not romantic partners. He moved to another state eventually. Got a job as a facility manager at a hospital. Making sure the vulnerable are protected, he said. It's what I should have done all along, instead of just cleaning up after monsters. 2 years after the trial, I started a support group for survivors of medical abuse. It started small, just 3 of us meeting in a church basement once a week, drinking bad coffee and sharing our stories. But word spread. More women came forward, not just from Dr. Cross's practice, but from other situations, other violations of medical trust. We created a website, a hotline, a network of support. We lobbied for better oversight of sedation practices, for mandatory witnesses during procedures involving vulnerable patients, for stricter penalties for medical professionals who abuse their power. It became my purpose, my reason for continuing. I couldn't undo what happened to me, couldn't erase the trauma or bring back the innocence I'd lost, but I could help others. I could make sure their stories were heard, believed, supported. I could turn my pain into something that mattered. 5 years after the trial, I met someone. His name was David, and he was a victim advocate at the district attorney's office. We met at a conference on medical abuse, where I was giving a talk about survivor support networks. He approached me afterward, shook my hand. That was powerful, he said. Thank you for sharing your story. We got coffee, then dinner, then more coffee and more dinners and long walks, where we talked about everything and nothing, where I slowly learned to trust again. I told him everything on our 5th date, sitting in his car outside my apartment, my hands shaking. I need you to know, I said. Before this goes any further, I need you to know what happened to me. I need you to know I gave up a child. I need you to know I'm broken in ways I'm still discovering. He listened to the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, he took my hand. You're not broken, he said quietly. You're surviving. There's a difference. We got married 2 years later, in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. My parents walked me down the aisle together, both of them crying. Mark sent a card. No note, just his signature, but it felt like closure. David and I decided not to have children. It was my choice, and he supported it without question. Family doesn't have to mean kids, he said. It just means people who choose each other. On the 10th anniversary of the sentencing, I received a letter. It was from Julian Cross, forwarded through the prison system. My hands shook as I held it, debating whether to open it or burn it unread. I opened it. Inside was a single page, his handwriting precise and controlled. Emily, I am writing this against the advice of my attorney and my therapist. I am writing this knowing you may never read it, knowing you have every right to throw it away unread. I want to say I'm sorry, but I know those words are meaningless. I know they don't undo what I did, don't erase your pain or the pain of the other women I hurt. I know an apology from me is worth less than nothing. I've spent 10 years in here trying to understand why I did what I did. My therapist says I have an empathy disorder, that something in my brain doesn't process other people as fully human. She says this isn't an excuse, just an explanation. She's right. It's not an excuse. I destroyed lives. I destroyed your life. I created a child through violence and violation, and then that child was given away because of what I did. The weight of that will follow me until I die. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did. I know what I am, And if I could go back and unmake every choice that led to that day, I would. But I can't. So instead, I rot here, knowing that every day I spend behind these walls is less than what I deserve. I'm sorry. For whatever it's worth, I'm sorry. Julian Cross. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, put it in an envelope, and filed it away in a box in my closet where I kept all the documentation from the trial. I never responded. I never acknowledged it. Because he was right. His apology was worthless. It changed nothing. It healed nothing. But somehow, knowing that he knew, that he understood what he'd done, that he was spending his days in a cell contemplating the wreckage he'd created, somehow that helped. Just a little. Life went on. It always does, whether you want it to or not. I continued my advocacy work, expanding the support network to cover multiple states. I testified before Congress about medical abuse and the need for better protections. I wrote articles, gave speeches, appeared on podcasts and news programs. I became the face of something I never wanted to be part of, but a face that was needed. David and I bought a house. We adopted 2 dogs. We took vacations and hosted dinner parties and lived a life that looked, from the outside, completely normal. And most of the time it was normal. Most of the time I could go days without thinking about what happened, without feeling the weight of it crushing me. But sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up from dreams I couldn't quite remember, my heart racing, David's hand on my shoulder asking if I was okay. I'm okay, I'd tell him. And mostly it was true. The trauma never completely leaves. It lives in your body, in your nervous system, in the way you flinch at certain smells or sounds or situations. But you learn to carry it. You learn to live around it, to build a life that's bigger than the worst thing that ever happened to you. You learn that surviving isn't the same as thriving, but sometimes surviving is enough. 15 years after that day in the dental chair, I stood in front of a room of 200 survivors at our annual conference. These were women and men who'd been violated by doctors, dentists, therapists, nurses, people who'd abused their positions of power and trust. You are not what happened to you, I told them, my voice steady, strong. You are what you choose to become afterward. You are every day you choose to keep going. You are every moment you choose to believe your own story, even when the world tells you to be quiet. The room erupted in applause, and I felt something shift inside me. Not healing exactly, but acceptance. Acceptance that this was part of my story now, woven into the fabric of who I was. Acceptance that I couldn't change the past, but I could shape the future. Acceptance that I had survived. After the conference, a young woman approached me, maybe 22, her eyes red from crying. I was sedated during a procedure 6 months ago, she said quietly. I woke up feeling wrong. Everyone told me I was being paranoid, that I was imagining things. But I know something happened. I know it. I took her hands in mine, looked her in the eyes. I believe you, I said, and we're going to help you. You're not alone. You're never going to be alone again. She started to cry, and I held her while she sobbed. This stranger who was no longer a stranger. This survivor who was just beginning her journey toward healing. And I thought, this is why I'm still here. This is why I didn't step off that bridge. This moment, right here, this connection, this belief, this solidarity. This is what we build from the ashes of our trauma. This is how we win. If you or someone you know has experienced medical abuse or assault, please know that you are not alone. There are resources available, people who will believe you, support networks that exist to help you through this. Your story matters, your pain matters, and you deserve justice, healing, and peace. To everyone who's made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. Thank you for being the kind of person who doesn't look away from hard truths. Please subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear it. These stories need to be told. These voices need to be heard. And to any survivors watching, you are stronger than what happened to you. You are braver than you know. And you are absolutely, completely, undeniably believed. Keep going. The world needs you in it.